Okay, well, welcome everybody to this live open day webinar for our Master of Public Policy MPP program, which lives in the LSE School of Public Policy. It's a great pleasure to see you all, although actually I can't see you. I'm assuming I've been reliably informed by my colleagues that you're out there, and we've got a good number of people joining us today. So that's wonderful to see. It's great, really encouraging to see the level of interest in our program, in our MPP. So my name's Simon Vasto. I'm the program director and have been for 3 years now since our MPP started. I guess, yep, I'm talking to you from my office on the 5th floor of our cutting edge new building. The 5th floor is where the School of Public Policy lives. Great to be here. It's a crisp and sunny day outside, and in London that is. Really, for the next hour, we are at your disposal, I and colleagues, ready to tell you a little bit about the programme, about the MPP, and answer questions, whichever they might be. And of course, you know, many of you may have already put applications in already. Hope so. Others might be sort of shopping around, thinking about different programmes and different schools, and we'll no doubt have lots of questions. So, you know, the idea is that we support you in this session. It's just a beginning of a conversation. There are lots of other Q&As going on between now and next September. So plenty of opportunity to inform yourself and to get to know us, and indeed to get to know colleagues, potential future colleagues on the programme. So what are we going to do for the next hour? Well, the overview really comes in 3 parts. We'll talk a little bit about LSE, SPP and the MPP programme, people, place and passions, dare I say. A little bit about the basic structure of the programme, the goals, what we want for you on it, and the curriculum, how it all fits together. And then thirdly, your development, which is very important to us, your development as a public policy professional. A big part of our programme is to you know, help you get better, become a more confident and effective public policy professional in whatever line of policy related work you're in. So that's the overview. Don't believe me, best to take it from the people that have been there and done that, and I'm very grateful and pleased to introduce 3 alumni of our programme, 2 from the class of 2021, Katie Aylesbury, who graduated this summer and is now working at the Economic Policy Research Institute. Say hi, Katie, briefly, and we'll come back to you.
Hello, thank you, Simon. Lovely to meet you all.
Great to have you here. I was expecting to introduce Prashatas Bhatnagar, who's also graduated in the summer, and he was going to join us. He's now, well, he's very recently landed a job at the Tony Blair Institute of Global Change, and is probably busy on some other aspect of global change, but I hope very much he'll be joining us in the next few minutes. And then someone from the class of 2020, our inaugural year on the MPP, Toluwala Kazali, who I know is in Lagos, and is now working at the World Bank. Say hi quickly, Tolu.
Hi, everyone. Looking forward to this session and answering some of your questions.
Great stuff. Well, let's dive in. Well, I should just say a little note of housekeeping first. So we are on a webinar, so we can't see you or indeed hear from you. So your channel of communication with us is to write questions into the Q&A function, okay? And I and colleagues are going to try and collate and respond to as many as we can in the hour, but we'll certainly make sure we respond to all of them either after the seminar or via email. So please do write away. There's no question too straightforward or even silly, so please feel free to write in your questions. And of course, I should say this session is being recorded, and it will be loaded up on the LSE Open Day website for you all to refer to. And there's our generic MPP email address at the bottom, which is always actively operated, and we'll respond to you very quickly via that mail address as well. Okay, so a little bit about people, place and the passions. Well, obviously, I don't need to introduce LSE. The place to be, as one of our former directors, Anthony Giddens, used to refer to it. Clearly, it's a world-class institution. It needs no introduction on that front. It's a wonderful place to study. Anyone that's studied here will sort of tell you that it sort of stays with you throughout life in all sorts of positive ways. The friends you make, the things you learn, and the networks you build. And it's just a fantastic place to come and spend some time and with like-minded people and learn about any aspect of social sciences. It's in the top tier of institutions globally for the social sciences, and has been for a long time. And it's just an incredibly diverse place as well. And there's some stats there that back that up, both the students that come and study here and the faculty that work here as well. I see Prashatas has just joined us. Welcome, Prashatas. Say hello quickly, just so we can hear your voice.
Hello. Hi, Simon. I can hear you loud and clear.
Great to have you here. I'll come back to you in a while. Okay, so within the School of Public Policy within the LSE exists the School of Public Policy. We were launched relatively recently in 2018 under the leadership of our new dean, Professor Andres Velasco, who's from Chile, a former Minister of Finance and the presidential candidate, and a wonderful person to work for, no doubt. And so the school is relatively new, but has been running master's level programs for a long time, notably our MPA program, which is our 2-year full-time program. So we've around 250 plus full-time students here. You get to interact through courses, through extracurricular activity, and it's a real kind of melting pot of social science learning. So within that exists our MPP. It's a 9-month program from September to June. It's all about teaching and you learning the craft of government, and I'll say more about that in a minute. There is one sort of criterion for entry. Basically it's a program for early to mid-career policy professionals. So we require at least 5 years of policy relevant experience from our applicants. And we have some discretion about that. If you've got 4.9 years of policy relevant experience and your application is high quality and we like you, then we have some discretion. But generally speaking, the cutoff is at least 5 years of policy relevant experience. And this year and next year, you'll be in a cohort of around 90 students. This year we have 84. You're probably wondering, is this the kind of place for me? Will I fit in? Well, here are some basic demographics. The average age of this year's cohort is 31, min-max 25 and 45. A pretty good balance between male and female, and an average number of years in work a little bit higher than 5, and it's probably likely to go up a little bit next year, but that's around 7 to 8. And again, like most LSE programs, master's level, a huge diversity of nationalities and geographical backgrounds. If you're thinking, have I got the right academic background for this, then do not be worried. This is a very broad church, and here's a little bit of data about this year's cohort and their academic undergrad and postgraduate backgrounds. And I think this is a wonderful mix of quarters, really. We've got a quarter of our cohort who've done political science or another social science undergrad, a quarter lawyers and humanities, a quarter economists and accountants, let's say, and a quarter from STEM sciences. And that's like an ideal mix, I think, and I have no reason to think it would be any different next year. So we're a very broad church, and a lot of the learning that takes place is interdisciplinary by nature. A little bit about professional experience. You're probably thinking, am I the right kind of person in terms of my professional background? Well, again, I'd say don't worry, this is a very broad church. About half of our cohort come from the civil service in their various countries. About half of them will probably go back to that particular part of the civil service. Whereas the other half of that bit, may well go elsewhere, thinking about pivoting, thinking about changing out of the civil service or government role for a while, maybe not forever. So that's one half. The other half come from all over the place, I would say, the private sector, management consulting, NGOs, law firms, and the list is there in front of you really. So yeah, it's again a wonderful place to come and experience people that have worked in other professions and in other sectors. A little bit about the range of public sector experience. I mean, I won't go through this list, but it's an alphabetical list of all of the sector experience we've got this year. So the point is obvious, you know, you come with experience in one sector, but mix with all sorts of people who've worked in other sectors. And yeah, and in terms of the backgrounds of firms and organizations, which organizations feed us our students, well, there's just a small number of them of this year's cohorts, and you know there are some very well-known organizations amongst those, but you don't have to have come from a big well-known organization. As long as you've got good solid public policy experience in your background, then that's great, and we welcome you. So I'm going to stop there briefly and just ask our panelists to just reflect on what it was like really to learn to be in such a diverse setting and amongst such a diverse cohort. Anyone want to reflect on that briefly? Katie, I'll start with you as you're at the top of the... You're on mute.
Sorry, just just looking for the unmute button. Sorry about that. It somehow always hides from me, no matter how long we've been on Zoom. Sure. Yeah. So, well, reflecting on the diverse cohort, of course, it's diverse not only in terms of nationality, but also in so many other ways. So for me, I think that was really important. I mean, so just to give you a bit of context, before coming to the MPP, I came from an NGO background. And one of the kind of things that I was really hoping to gain from the MPP was to have exposure to also a broad range of views and people from different backgrounds. The NGO world can be a bit of an echo chamber in that sense, of many people with shared value systems and beliefs. So I was really looking to kind of push myself out of that zone. And so I think it was really valuable in that sense that the people who come to the MPP come from the private sector, from government, from NGOs as well, and have a wide range of different sort of political positions, which I think for me really also forced me to test myself, challenge myself, and develop my own arguments. And as you were saying, Simon, you mentioned about fitting in. So definitely before I came to the program, that was a concern for me. I had, as I say, I was from an NGO background, so I was thinking, oh, maybe, you know, everyone else will have had years of policy experience, like direct policy experience, and you know, perhaps I'll be the odd one out. So I was really pleased to find that that not only was this not an issue, but it turned out to be an extremely welcoming, diverse, engaged, global, critical thinking community that now I can call friends. So that's from my side.
Great stuff, thank you. Tolu or Prashitas, any brief reflections on that?
Yeah, let Tolu go and then I'll follow.
Okay. So I would say that one of the greatest benefits for me of this diverse cohort was in terms of learning. So learning from different people and their perspectives. So it's one thing to understand policy and governance from your environment and the nuances of where you've come from, you know, your country or your region. But it was extremely exciting for me to be able to understand governance and policy from different countries and different regions, to understand why certain things worked in certain countries and why certain things didn't work. Essentially, it's just essentially a whole different learning curve, and it broadens your understanding. And for me, one thing you also re-emphasized was the fact that when you're thinking about public policy, there's really no one-size-fits-all solution. You essentially have to understand the nuances of every country and every region to be able to provide the right policy solutions. So it was incredibly beneficial to be able to just have that all-round experience from different countries and just different walks of life. So yeah.
Yeah, just to, I think, very well summarized. Tolu has already summarized that point. Just to add to that, I think one aspect specifically from the diversity of the cohort that I took was in terms of a good degree of analysis you can do with what different countries at different points of time have done to affect any development challenges. For example, you can say that the UK or Europe and maybe 40, 60 years ago was faced with a similar set of problems and similar forces shaping a problem, and they did X, Y, Z. So maybe in a similar country in Asia or any other developing country, we can see that given this kind of a situation, these couple of steps were taken, so we can apply that. So there is a good amount of cross-functional learning that one can borrow. And most importantly, experiential learning from your cohort, because not just that they come from such a diversity, functional diversity is also very unique. We had people in our batch who had served in the law and order, some in consulting in different countries. So the way, as what Tolu was alluding to, the way the problem is approached and a solution is architected is very different. And I think the great takeaway is when we sit together in a class and stress test each other's hypothesis of what it should be. I think that was a very, very significant takeaway. So at least, you know, when you're in a policy formulation space, what at least will not work, at least that answer will come to you up front.
Thank you very much, all three. Very nicely said. There's a question on the chat about what do we consider more important, program-related working experience or bachelor undergraduate degrees and performance academically. I think the answer to that is both, probably because of the criteria of the program. We look at your working experience and make sure you meet the basic 5-year. Then we look at what you've done and think, wow, is this person fantastic or what? And then I think we probably look at your academic background and just make sure that you're not going to struggle fundamentally on the program. It's an intensive program. It requires a good range of abilities across all the different disciplines. So we just want to be sure that you're not going to be out of your depth. So I think that's probably the right pecking order. Another question: should my personal statement contain more work experience than academic interests? Well, I think in your personal statement, it's an important thing to think about, because we do read them, and often they can make a big difference to whether you get an offer or not. We want you to come across in your personal statement. We want to know about you, what you've done, what the rationale is for you wanting to come and do an MPP. We want to see how you as a person, as someone that has interests and has done stuff, experience, connects with our program, and so there's that element of that. And then I think we want to know where you feel it's all going. Actually, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be predicting the future, but I think there has to be a rationale moving forward as well, and that's what we're interested in your statement. Perhaps we can move on a little bit. There's a question about financial aid. Perhaps colleagues could give some background to that question. Perhaps you could. If you, right, I'll ask you to. Let's move on. We can come back to that question if you, Smriti, if you don't feel we've answered it effectively. To really what the program is all about, the goals, what do we want for you, what do we want to give you, what do you want to take away from this, what's the structure of it all, and what will you be doing day to day through the curriculum. So as I said, this is a 9-month program, and it's really designed for people that want to come out of leave their world of work temporarily, not for a very long period of time, but for a manageable length of time, which is 9 months. And come and learn the craft of government with, as we said, with a huge range of other people of similar minds and similar aspirations. So in a nutshell, we want to give you what you need to become more effective, more confident, and those two are equally important as policy professionals. It's often the case that people do our program and leave and sort of feel different, and it's about, you know, it's the emotional side, it's the confidence in one's abilities, the confidence to go out there and, you know, and talk to economists or, you know, talk to politicians in effective ways. And so it certainly gives you as much in terms of skills and knowledge as it does in terms of the emotional capability to go back out there and make a difference. I think, you know, inevitably it gives you a deeper understanding of policy and policy making in all its fascinating variations. And I think, you know, it gives you a way of really thinking fundamentally and explicitly about your career trajectory. Where are you heading as a professional, and what do you want to achieve in the near term and in the longer term? It's interdisciplinary, and that's a very important element of it at its core. And, you know, we're a relatively small department at SPP, but we draw on all of our big important departments across the LSE. We draw on economics. Undoubtedly, a big part of the program is giving you usable and technical tools to talk to economists effectively and to be able to converse with them, to understand empirical evidence effectively, and to be a good consumer of analysis and evidence in that respect. But it's not really enough to be able to do that if you can't understand the politics and how political institutions work. And a big part of this is our program is giving you that insight into politics and how it distorts and affects everything that policymakers must do. It's probably not sufficient to do either of those two things highlighted in yellow if you can't understand how organizations work and how institutions work. And how to deliver stuff on the ground, how to turn, you know, ambitious, aspirational policy elegantly written into actual change on the ground. And the third big element of our program is public management and giving you an understanding of how to manage change effectively. And I think finally, it's no good doing any of that if your ethical frameworks and understanding is all over the place. Policymakers have to make ethical decisions, whether they know it or not, whether they like it or not, every day. And so our program gives you a good grounding in philosophical principles and how to reason effectively and in a disciplined way across all of that. So, you know, there you are in the middle, actually. And the program, you know, gives you these sort of deep dives into disciplinary viewpoints, very important, all of those. But it also aims to make you into an integrative thinker, able to see the links, to make the connections, and to be holistic in the way you tackle any policy problem. So that's what we aim for you. In terms of the actual curriculum, how does that translate? Well, this is a British university. Generally speaking, British universities work on a 3-term structure. The Michaelmas term, MT, from September to December. We give you a good dose of core courses in political science, for public policy, quantitative methods, and public management. Now, you know, 3 of the 4 units of this program are core. That means everyone has to do them, with some exceptions, depending on your background. It is possible for some students to check out of the economics-based courses if they, you know, they're much more advanced than those, and some do. So then in the second term, the Lent term, from January to April, we give you the sort of the second half of the core offering, which is economics for public policy, philosophy for public policy, and then a general sort of big topic course called public policy applications. So those 4 courses make up 3/4 of your full program. And then on the right-hand side, you get a quarter of choice. You can select options courses from the School of Public Policy, and you have a good menu of courses. I can talk more about those if you want. I won't do it in the core bit here, but we can provide many further details on which courses we've got available this year. It's likely to be much the same with some additions next year. Okay. There's an option to do a policy paper, which is a half unit. There's an option to do a dissertation, which is a whole unit, i.e. you spend all of your options units on a dissertation. Okay, and quite a few of our students have chosen to do policy papers. I think it's a good option in many ways because it gives you a piece of work that you can get stuck into throughout the course of 9 months, and then you have something to show for yourself, as it were, afterwards. It's a great way of opening doors while you're here, and a great way of positioning yourself afterwards in the job market. You have a piece of published work, or not published, maybe it could be published in future, but a piece of work that's your own. Okay. And then in the summer term, there are no taught courses in the summer term, but a lot is going on. We have a continuation of group projects from the policy applications course, a very extensive professional skills program. I'll say a bit more about that in a minute. Extracurricular stuff. There's a small matter of some of exams going on as well for those of you taking exams, and a good opportunity for you to really start to think about next steps career-wise. So that's the structure of the course. Happy to take any questions on that if you want to write those into the chat. Hang on, I'm just going to look at the chat briefly. So there's a question from Keizuke, which I'll read out. So I'm wondering if the program is suitable for studying energy policy and related areas. Is this the right option to learn energy and environment from a policy perspective? Well, I would say to that, this is a program which is transferable to any area of public policy, including energy, but many more. And there's a good amount of space in these core courses to think about your own area of specialism through the lenses of these disciplines. You're also at liberty to take courses from across the LSE if there's a particular course that you want to take on energy policy, for example. And we have the Grantham Institute here, which no doubt covers those areas. Then we do what we can to support you in getting onto those courses. Now, if these courses are not public policy courses, i.e. in our own department, we're sometimes at the whim of other departments, and we can't often guarantee that you'll get onto those courses, but we certainly do what we can to help you. And many of our students are taking courses from across the LSE this year. So the short answer to your question is yes, it is suitable for energy policy. There's a question from Kenji on being exempted from economics for public policy. Well, we have a mechanism for allowing you to be exempt. There's a simple test that we ask students to take, but fundamentally we look at your background, and if you've studied economics before at undergraduate or postgraduate level, then we're fairly happy for you to check out of economics for public policy and take a more advanced course which is economics focused. Okay, so I hope that answers your question. Good. Another question: if I have a legal background for about 7 years, is it a policy background enough for me to apply? Yes, absolutely it is. Hope that answers your question. Let me turn it over to our panel with a sort of general question. It might be an unfair one. I mean, looking back at the program, what you got from it substantively, what did you get from it a year after or 6 months after? Prashitas, maybe I can start with you, because we were discussing briefly recently, and I think you.
Absolutely. I think the one, the two biggest takeaways from this program, number one has been in the quant side, because that is something that you can implement and use it the next day you're out of college, in your workplace, in work setting, or in any professional career trajectory. So that is the number one thing, particularly in terms of causation, causality, correlation. That is a very good underpinning there. And how, as Simon earlier alluded to, how do you become a much better and a more and a focused consumer of data. So looking at it, you know what exactly data you need to frame a policy. If not, how helpful it will be. So that is one example of a good takeaway from this program. And another very important takeaway, these are on the marketability side that you can apply it the next day out of that, is the ability to come up with it becomes you will be in a very normal state to write a very coherent, reasoned article or a paper, like an essay. For example, that is the most significant takeaway in the program, is that you'll be asked to do so many essays, 2,000 words, 3,000 words, that at the end of it, coherent reasoning, logical reasoning, which builds on evidence-based policies, builds on the some good theoretical underpinnings of some big authors and the frameworks that will be taught in class. For example, to put all of that, compound it together in a very, not just easy to understand, but a very convincing prescription, 2 to 3 about 4 or 5 pages, which is about 2,000 to 3,000 words. I think that is one very significant takeaway. That these two, I feel, are very important takeaways that you can apply next day. But otherwise, there are many more. For example, political science. We often understand why democracy works in few countries, why it doesn't work in many countries. That's the question which is there with many people. I think to understand what has been the evolution of democracy, why political systems exist in different forms, in different regions, why it doesn't. So that is a very, very good intellectually to open your mind space and to understand how the system of governance has evolved and where can it go further. What are potential risks that we do see? How have expectations of people changed? And in that specifically, I think a very significant takeaway comes from the discussions in the class. So when the faculty, the professor will give you a certain idea and students will discuss and debate that. And that is a very, very good takeaway to get in the program. So these were the top 3 takeaways I did have. But otherwise, I think it's a very market-oriented program. And I think the best side is if you're coming from 4 to 5 years experience, you're already coming through, then it's hard to typically sit in a 2+ year program, as you won't find that anywhere else. In a short program, you come in, do this and you go, so you won't feel the time that you have to adjust in academia, because it's not easy to adjust in academia if you come out to 4 to 5 years experience. So yeah, I mean, Simon, these would be it, but happy to take on any specific questions if any of you have.
Great stuff. Thank you, Prashas. Yes, feel free to write questions in the chat and any of that. Prashas, I think you have to leave at 22, don't you? So
yeah, I have about 5 minutes. I'm good.
Okay, great stuff. Tolu, maybe I can come to you on that rather general question. What did you gain from the program in terms of skills and knowledge and insight, etc.?
So I would put the things that I gained across 3 key areas. I would say first would be a great network of friends, I would call them, and people who are passionate about changing the narrative of the African continent, as well as people who are passionate about changing the world. I would say the second thing would be the opportunity to write a policy paper that has helped me through the recommendations, one, to try to influence policies around internal displacement, as well as contributed immensely to my documentary. So I think that my objective around that was, one, I did not want a policy paper that sat on the shelf. I wanted something that would go into the real world to make an impact. So I'm glad it did. And I would say the third and final thing through lessons and discussions with people is the greater realization that when we talk about public policy and governance and the need to change, or rather to make a change, is that if I want my country to do better, I have to pull up my sleeves and get the work done. If I want my continent to do better, I have to pull out the networks that I've made. Hassan, Mohammed, everybody, let's come together to make a change and get the work done. If I want to make a change globally, then I am also able to pull the networks that I have. But it's going to have to be you coming out and saying, I want to make a change. I want to use the lessons that I've learned, you know, all the skills, the quantitative skills and the qualitative skills, everything to actually make a change. But it has to be about pulling up your sleeves and actually just getting the work done. Yeah.
Great stuff. There's a question on the chat. Can you elaborate a little bit about quantitative methods? Maybe we can come to Katie, but I mean, did you have a quantitative background, Katie, before you came to the LSE? Had you studied econometrics and quantitative methods? And what did you learn in that respect, particularly in that respect? Because I think that's a really good question.
Well, in my case, I had not studied econometrics ever before, so I wasn't familiar with any of the quantitative methods that we studied. I had done a degree in maths and philosophy, so I had to some extent, you know, I guess seeing a formula made me maybe less afraid than some people who don't have a sort of maths background. However, I think that well, I think that was a really important component of the program, as Prachetas has said. But B, I think it was quite accessible, even for people who don't have that kind of background, because the emphasis is really on understanding the concepts and how to interpret and how to understand that kind of analysis, and how to be able to talk about it fluently. And, you know, if you see a research paper that's presenting some kind of results, understand how to interpret them, but also how to challenge them and challenge the validity. So the real core of the question is how do you know when there's a causal relation between A and B, which is obviously crucial for any kind of policy making, policy design, policy analysis. So yeah, so I think that while it can seem quite intimidating for people who maybe don't have that background, it is accessible, and it's also just hugely important for your future work. So I think just push through it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And also happy to receive any questions specifically, or if anyone's particularly worried about that, feel free to reach out, and I'd be happy to discuss further, and I'm sure colleagues would as well. If I can just come on to the question of sort of overall what I've gained, I've actually got three things, not only three things, but 3 C's. So craft, confidence, and community, which I think are all things that Simon highlighted and really resonated actually with my experience as well. So craft, the program does have a focus on craft of government. It really equipped me with like a toolkit and conceptual framework and analytical capabilities in order to think through wicked problems, you know, pressing public policy problems in a structured way. And that's not to say that there's a one-size-fits-all framework. And I think that's where it's really important that there is this kind of broad approach of looking at things from the quantitative lens, the economics lens, but through to also, you know, philosophy and political science, and then the more practical like applications of public policy. So that really like gives you quite a full and complete toolkit for looking at policy problems. And then secondly, confidence. So it offers you, the course offers you also an opportunity to have exposure to all of those different topics, also multiple ways of working, you know, individual research projects, team projects, extracurricular activities as well. And I think the combination of all those things, especially for me, gave me so much more confidence to feel that I can engage in multiple conversations with people from all different backgrounds, and on policy topics. And then finally, the third element, community. So I think in general, it was an incredible opportunity to build relationships, not only with this amazing, diverse and engaged and you know, really driven change-making community within the cohort, but also within LSE, you know, getting to know the professors and becoming part of that community. And that's really not just like a lip service, like, oh, part of the community. It's definitely something that very much still continues. And it's an incredible platform. So in fact, just last Monday, an event that I coordinated took place within the School of Public Policy. so something that very much continues on, and I hope will continue to do so.
Thank you, great stuff. I'm going to add your 3 C's to my 3 P's: people, passion, and play. People, place, and passion. Good.
And just one point I just want to allude to. I think the question that I think one person asked, that elaborate a little more about quantitative methods.
Yep.
Just to give you a more realistic, I think Katie has already answered that, but kind of an example question. For example, there is a module in this program that will teach you to measure the price of non-market goods. For example, clean air. Suppose, how do you put a price to that? Suppose you want to move in a neighborhood, there's a house, you want to price it. How do you do that? So these are some very, very interesting toolkits and frameworks you will learn how to price clean air. For example, if there's a national park, there's a policy to be made whether that should be converted into an industrial zone or not. How should we put a value to it? Economic value to it. So there are some very interesting frameworks that you will learn that will not just give you to actually, tell you the thinking behind it, but actually do it in practice. So just to give you a little flavor on that.
Thanks, Prash. That's very nicely put. Yeah, a couple of questions come in. Are there opportunities to conduct research with a professor while on the MPP program? Well, yes. I mean, this is an intensive program. We reckon it takes up somewhere around 40 hours a week, maybe plus, which requires a full-time focus. But of course, there's space to work part-time. And I don't know, Katie, Tolu, did either of you work whilst doing this program, or did you feel that? I'm not sure whether you did or not. Anyway, but yes, of course, there are many opportunities to work with professors in the LSE whilst you're doing the program. It could be that sort of very occasional part-time research work, or something a bit more substantial. And of course, when the program's finished, then that's a good way of sort of segueing into the next chapter. And quite a few students sort of, it's a good sort of stepping stone to a job afterwards, to carry on with a bit of research work until you find your next port of call. So yeah. Other questions? I think anonymous attendee, I think we've elaborated on methods, but if you've got further questions, then please do email us and we can follow up. Is this a 5-year policy relevant? Sorry, is the 5-year policy relevant experience measured from August or when we submit our application? Basically, we go from August, September. So we make it as easy as possible for you to meet the 5 years. Good. Let me just say something in the final few minutes about a very important sort of third element of the program, and it's the academic discipline and learning. There's case studies and real life and your experience, but there's also you as a public policy professional. And here's a little bit of background data that I collected about our first cohort and what they did after leaving the MPP. So a good chunk of people enhanced their positions within the same organisation. So as I said earlier, civil servants would have gone back to their old job and got promotion or seen in a different light. So that's a good chunk of people. Then a good chunk of people sort of left their previous jobs but ended up pivoting a little bit within the same sector. And that's that developed their sector specific experience, but also allowed them to see their particular sector from a different perspective. Then there's a group of people who moved into completely different roles, moved into government roles from outside of government, moved into international organizations or development banks or NGOs from somewhere else, or moved into private sector or consulting roles. And then there's some others who haven't quite worked out what their trajectory is. Anyway, but there are lots of different trajectories is the basic point. And we support you in as much as we possibly can to think about what your trajectory is, what this window of opportunity should allow you to do, how you want to use it to the maximum potential, and where you want to go really in the year after you leave us, and then 10 years after you leave us. Yeah, and that I think is a fairly good illustration of the diversity we have. While you're here and throughout the year, there is an increasingly extensive professional skills program that we offer you. Right from day one, we get you to think about this. As I've just said, we get you to reflect on you as a professional, public policy professional. Where are your strengths? Where are your weaknesses? There's a self-critical reflection element to the program. It's voluntary. You can sign up to it. We don't force you to do it, but it's jolly valuable. And then throughout the year, all sorts of master classes, weekend courses, weekday courses on a range of skills that we think are absolutely vital for you as a public policy professional. And there's a few listed there. The list is growing, and probably by next year we'll have additional elements as well. Communicating for public policy, being a leader, what that means, how to be better at it, how to negotiate effectively was a very popular one this year. Working with politicians and making decisions fast or slow. So that's just a selection of the types of courses, short courses we offer as a sort of extracurricular bit that runs through the year. Okay, so happy to take questions on any of that. We also have a very well-developed, well-resourced careers service and a dedicated consultant, Anne Clinton, who's highly experienced, who works closely with our students in all aspects of careers development. This is something that this is something that pretty much all the students benefit from, I think, through the year as well. And so very happy to put you in touch with the careers service if you want further information. There's a lot online already, and they're very interactive and run lots of events. Some of them may be for LSE students only, but I know that quite a few of them are public facing as well. That's just a brief bit on the professional skills element of the program. Katie, Tolu, would you like to reflect on how you've developed as a public policy professional and how you connected into these elements of the program briefly?
So I would say prior to coming to the LSE, I had worked for over 9 years across the private sector and public sector. And I think getting into the LSE was right off the back of my experience in the public sector. And what I would say is that as a public policy professional, you're ever evolving, and you're going to, I would say I'm still evolving. Now I work with the World Bank, which is in the development space, and it's still an evolving process. You're going to have to learn to deal with different stakeholders, with different incentives, motives, and I would say interests. So, and you'll be trying to achieve different policy objectives. So I would say that as a public policy professional, the background, the MPP program was extremely helpful in terms of, like Simon has said, and Katie and everyone has said, in terms of preparing you and giving you the tools and everything you need. However, it's a lifelong learning process. Yeah, that's all I would say.
Thank you.
Yes, I would definitely agree with Tolu. So for me, I think I'm in a slightly different situation because my background was not in the policy space at all. So actually the MPP enabled me to start thinking of myself as a public policy professional. So some people come to the cohort with extensive public policy experience and others don't. For me, my background was in an NGO. I'd founded and directed an NGO in Nicaragua for 7 years, so very much directly like a bottom-up sort of hands-on experience. And the MPP was really an opportunity to learn to think about those problems from a much more macro lens and policy lens, which is needed in order to have the kind of impact at scale. And so the MPP was certainly necessary for me to make that transition from an NGO towards a sort of more policy oriented space. So I'm currently working at the Economic Policy Research Institute, so a kind of think tank, do tank, working directly in research and accompaniment to governments, specifically on social protection. And that's something that I absolutely would not have been able to do without the MPP and without the toolkit, the skills that we've been talking about that it equipped me with.
So yeah, so Katie, you would be in the orange section here, I guess, on the and Tolu would no doubt be in the yellow section. So that's good. We've got you both categorized. I feel better about that. Okay, keep your questions coming in. I see that Georgina is responding to the question about GRE results. We don't currently, as far as I know, ask for GRE results unless I haven't seen them. No one showed me them. A relevant policy paper. Well, you don't need to submit a piece of work. It's really down to your statement at the end of the day, and your background in your CV and your references. Okay. I hope that answers that. Maybe Georgina was answering that already. Yeah, I mean, there's a good question here about the range of programs, not only in SPP, but more broadly in the LSE. And it's a tricky one to answer. I mean, so the question is, there are other programs which have similar names. Well, that's certainly correct. I appreciate, could you describe advantages of this program generally? Well, I don't want to slag off the opposition or it's like I mean, I think the best thing for me to do is just to reiterate, I think, some of the things we've tried to cover in this hour about the MPP. I mean, clearly the MPP and the MPA are in the same school. We love them both. They have amazing strengths and similarities and commonalities of people and topics, and many of the courses that you take on the MPP you take with MPA students. So you get to be in the same classroom with them. There's lots of opportunities to interact with across the programs, and in many ways, you know, we're all of like mind and passion. So you know, there are huge commonalities. Obviously, the MPP is shorter. It's more intense, I think, and it's because the MPA is longer. There's a little bit more emphasis on on actually sort of doing the analysis and giving you the tools to become policy analysts as well as public policy professionals. And I think probably with the MPP, you know, there just sort of isn't the time really to go into the depth on the, you know, on the doing of the analysis. And probably what we're aiming to do is to make our MPP students high quality consumers of evidence. But you know, as my diagram previously, you know, suggested, we're trying to get you to be able to think quickly and effectively across different lenses and different viewpoints on policy problems and be able to integrate those. And I think, you know, as the data suggests, you know, we get people coming with strong economics, but perhaps less experience in public management or philosophy. We get lawyers who have never studied any economics in their life and very little statistics, but are very, you know, have very good experience on institutional elements or philosophical, ethical elements. And so everyone comes into the program with a different mix of backgrounds and talents. And I think generally what we're trying to produce here is a good sort of level across all of them, an ability to think effectively and to consume analysis and knowledge across all of those, and to operate effectively across all of those. And I think that's basically what the MPP is all about. That's its unique selling point. There aren't that many degrees that offer that core, and I think, you know, compared to all of the other ones probably mentioned here, that's what you get: an intensive, relatively quick exposure to these core disciplines and an ability to think effectively across them. Okay, but you know, people that come and do the MPA as well here, you know, it's fundamentally life-changing. The 2 years they spend here, you know, has profound effect on where they go with their careers and what they do. So all of our programs are just wonderful in every respect. I don't know whether that's answered the question, but I'm happy to take that conversation up again if you'd like to get in touch. I mean, there are other degrees. There's the public policy and administration degree in the government department that sits in the government department, and in some ways is influenced by the lens of political science, but many of their programs are influenced as well by economics. But I think what you get with the MPP is, just this incredible integrated, intensive experience training in craft of government, and highly transferable across all the areas of public sector. So I'll leave that question alone. Do we look at professional or academic recommendations? Yeah, there was a question earlier about that. Ideally, you'd have referees from your professional academic life, but if you've been in the world of work for 20 years and you can't even remember who taught you at university, we are very open to having 2 professional references. I think maximize what you've got is the name of the game. Okay, we're almost at time. 2 minutes left. I'm just going to go to my final slide, which is a sort of thank you from us. Thank you for joining us today. Thanks for your interest in the programme. This may well be the start of a conversation, as I said, and you're very welcome to get in touch with us at the MPP email address. You're very welcome to email me directly. I'm very happy. My email address is, I think, at the beginning of these slides rather than the end. Although maybe it isn't actually, maybe I didn't put it, but I'm very happy to be contacted. You can find me online. Further questions about admissions, there's a Q&A later this week on Thursday at 10 AM London time. Please feel free to join that. The recordings of this session and many others, including our MPA session from yesterday, is available on the Open Day webpage. And I look forward to receiving applications and reading them in the next few months. Good luck with your applications, and looking forward to furthering our conversation. I'll thank our 2 remaining panelists, Tolu and Katie. Incredibly grateful for your time and continued commitment to the programme. So have a good day. Many thanks to you all.
Thank you.
Time is upon us. Good luck and stay in touch. Thanks.
Thanks, Simon.
Thank you, Simon. Bye.